Welcome to the launch of the Irish Dementia Cafe Network. So I'd like to welcome everybody who is with us here today, our speakers and all of those who are joining us, our attendees. So welcome to you all. I'd like to give a particular welcome to the Minister for Older People and Mental Health, Mary Butler. Thank you, Minister, for joining us. Miriam O'Callaghan, broadcaster in RTE, who's launching the network for us and who launched Ireland's first network back in 2011, First Dementia Cafe. So thank you so much, Miriam, for doing that for us. Dr. Emer Begley, the Senior Project Manager in the HSE National Dementia Office. Thank you, Emer. The National Dementia Office has funded this project with funding from the Public Dormant Account funds through the Department of Health. So thank you very much for that. Kevin and Helena Quaid, who, this is a big introduction, they run the Canturk Memory Cafe. They're on the expert advisory panel of the project. Kevin is a member of the Irish Dementia Working Group. Helena is a member of the Dementia Carers Campaign Network, both of which are hosted by the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland. And Kevin is also an author who's written several books on Lewy body's dementia. The most recent is called Lewy Body, Dementia Survival and Me. And if you're interested in reading it, you can buy it on Amazon, and I would recommend it. Also, Anya Tehan, researcher at the Centre for Economic and Social Research in Dementia. So the Centre for Economic Research on Dementia did the first research on the Alzheimer cafes in Ireland, and that research formed the basis for this network here today. Also, like to say a big welcome to the members of the new Irish Dementia Cafe Network. So they are joining us from, now we'll have a whistle stop later, so I'll shout out their names now in the beginning though too. They're joining us from Glasnevin, South County Dublin, Donnybrook, Naas, Meath, Drogheda, Monaghan, Dundalk, Cavan, Letterkenny, Ballybuffet, Galway, Sligo, Leitrim, Canturk, Waterford and Thurles. I'm Sinead Brennan. I'm CEO of Engaging Dementia. It's an organisation that provides training, resources and supports for people with dementia and their carers. Our activities are focused on supporting well-being for people with dementia through the use of music, the Sonus programme, sensory interventions, the outdoors, the creative arts and therapeutic activities. We also pioneered the first Alzheimer Cafe in Ireland in 2011, the Alzheimer Cafe Donnybrook, bringing together a group of people and individuals, all of whom were interested in this wonderful model of a support service called an Alzheimer Cafe, and variously called Alzheimer Cafe, Memory Cafe, Dementia Cafe. So today, Ireland's 21 dementia, Alzheimer, memory cafes have been brought together to form the Irish Dementia Cafe Network, and it's a really exciting development for us all. A few technical points about this session. So it's on a Zoom webinar. Now we'd like people to give us just a quick idea of who you are. So you'll see now, it'll come up on your screens, a question saying, are you a person with dementia? Are you a carer? Are you a cafe coordinator, health and social care professional, member of the public and academic? Or, okay, great. So if you just give us a general idea of who you are, that's great, because Zoom has been wonderful in some ways, but in others, you miss that interaction with people and we can't see people who are joining us. So it's nice to get an idea of who is with us here today. This is on Zoom webinar. So we'll be going through the speakers. I've said hello to everyone. We'll be going through the speakers one by one. I've introduced you to the speakers here, and we'll also hear the stories of three couples who have come to the Dementia Cafe, both Dementia Cafe face-to-face or the virtual cafe, and that's Carly and Owen, Frank and Jackie, and who's our third person, Grace, our third couple? Melinda and Jerry. So we will hear from those later on. You can also join us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @DemCafeNetwork, @DemCafeNetwork. So we are on Twitter, and our website is also live today at dementiacafe.ie. So what is a Dementia Cafe? So a Dementia Cafe, it's a welcoming, once monthly meeting for anyone who is affected by dementia. for people living with dementia, their families and friends, healthcare professionals, and people who are interested in supporting a dementia inclusive community. Dementia cafes are run by voluntary steering committees, and the kind of core elements, the 4 core elements of the Dementia Cafe are atmosphere, support, information and community. So the Irish Dementia Cafe Network is a network of dementia cafes all around Ireland, each of which has this shared set of principles and guidelines. So the network has been set up both to bring cafes together and then also to support new startup cafes. Now, unfortunately, as we all know, over the past number of months, it's been such a difficult time, and cafes, just like so many other social supports, have had to be suspended. So in the background, so while the cafe meetings haven't been able to go ahead, all the cafe groups in the background are working together, and some have gone virtual. So on our website, you will see the list of cafes in Ireland and then those that have gone virtual as well. And the wonderful thing about the virtual cafe is it doesn't matter where you live. As long as you have a smartphone, or as long as someone can support you to tune in on Zoom or Google Meets or whatever platform is being used, you can attend the cafe. So until such time as our cafe meetings can be held face-to-face again, the cafes are still with us. And in the coming months, we're going to be working with the HSE and all the cafe groups on safe ways to reopen. So if we have a mailing list you can sign up to on our website if you wish, and we'll keep you updated there. Now, before I finish, I'll just comment also on the project's expert advisory panel. And that brought together people and individuals, organisations that are key stakeholders in the area of supporting people with dementia and their families in Ireland. Dr. Emer Begley, who I've already introduced, Dr. Tony Foley, GP and lecturer at the Department of General Practice in UCC, Matthew Gibb, Director of the Dementia Services Information and Development Centre, also with the Alzheimer Cafe Donnybrook, Dr. Louise Hopper, School of Psychology in DCU with the Alzheimer Cafe Glasnevin, Professor Kate Irving, School of Nursing and Psychotherapy and Community Health in DCU, Siobhan O'Connor, Head of Operations with the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland, Professor Eamon O'Shea, who works with Anya in the Centre for Economic and Social Research on Dementia, and then of course, Kevin and Talina Quaid. So now I'd like to hand you over to Mary Butler, Minister for Mental Health and Older People. Thank you so much, Minister, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me there?
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to join you. I am really sorry that we can't meet in person, but at least modern technology allows us to meet remotely and celebrate the launch of the Dementia Cafe Network. I would like to commend the National Dementia Office and Engaging Dementia for their work on this project. I especially want to thank the many volunteers who give their time and energy to run the Dementia Cafes. You make a real difference to the lives of people in your community, and thank you so much for this. As you may know, I am passionate about supporting people with dementia and their families. As previous co-chair of the All-Party Oireachtas Committee on Dementia in the last Dáil, I worked to ensure dementia was well placed in the political consciousness and highlighted the needs of people with dementia with colleagues in the Oireachtas. I am very interested in the Dementia Cafe model, knowing how well it has worked for the Déise Dementia Cafe in my own constituency, and I have popped along on several occasions to meet with the service users. I know how these cafes are often the first step people take into formal service following a dementia diagnosis. And it's great to know that there are other people there who are going through something similar, and that you can have the conversation, they can help you access services. And you know, the open and welcoming environment is an essential reason for this, as people, as I said, can meet others going through similar challenges. Places like this allow people with dementia to be themselves in a comfortable public setting. The information and peer support that people living with dementia and family carers receive in the dementia cafes are unique, away from the waiting rooms, away from the jargon and clinical setting of hospitals. The proof of the model is how popular the dementia cafes with people who vote with their feet and attend every month. And I think it's really, really important for the carers as well, that, you know, for that hour or 90 minutes, they can sit down, they can have a scone and a cup of tea, and they can have a chat and they can share experiences. And I think that's a huge support. As we know, the Dementia Cafe Network was funded through dormant accounts, funding secured by the Department of Health. Over 6 million has been made available for a range of innovative community supports. And I would like to commend the National Dementia Office for their sterling work in implementing these programs. As we all know, the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has hampered the provision of community supports across the country, and dementia cafes are no exception. I am aware that many cafes have had to temporarily pause their activities, but I also know that some have been able to go online and hold events in a different way, while others are continuing to work behind the scenes to offer alternative supports and to prepare for their reopening. I'm really looking forward to the whistle-stop tour of the cafes later on in this engagement. These efforts are also being replicated across the health service. The HSE has adapted its community service in order to provide a flexible response so that the needs of people with dementia continue to be met during the COVID-19 crisis. Primary care team support is operating nationwide, with referrals being made to community supports, including the Dementia Advisor Service and the local authority community response forums. The HSE use prioritisation and screening measures to identify clients needing home visits. The Department of Health and the HSE are undertaking work to determine the current level of service delivery in the community and to set out plans, including associated required capacity, to resume services, including day services in line with the roadmap for reopening society and business. This process will take on board the learning of the current period, including the possibility of delivering services in a new way and the requirement to adhere to public health guidance. As we all know, dementia is not just a health issue, it is also a social issue involving everyone from families and friends to businesses and the wider community. The Dementia Understand Together campaign continues to bring down the walls surrounding dementia by emphasising that the role everyone can play to make a difference in creating a society that embraces people with dementia. As you know, I have recently assumed the role of Minister of State with responsibility for mental health and older people. I know that there is still much work to be done to enhance services and supports for people living with dementia and those who care for them. The fact that we are now living with COVID-19 creates new challenges in ensuring that there is access to the right services and supports to assist people to live well in their communities. More than ever, we need to support older people to live at home safely and securely with the correct wraparound supports. And this is reflected in the programme for government commitment to establish a commission on care to examine care and support for older people. This year, an additional 10 dementia advisors will be recruited through the Alzheimer's Society of Ireland with Sláinte Care funding. The government is committed to building on this progress and moving forward with the implementation of the National Dementia Strategy. Over the past 9 years, dementia cafes have proven to be an excellent example of this. The creation of a national network will enable the cafes to continue supporting people in their communities. And I think the fact that Ireland's 21 dementia cafes have been brought together today under this umbrella is absolutely fantastic. I wish the network every success in the future, but I especially wish the 21 dementia cafes throughout Ireland the very best. I want to thank the volunteers that attend there. I want to thank the people who sponsor the tea and the coffee and the scones. And I want to thank everyone for all the work they are doing to support people living with dementia. Gorv míle maith agóibh go léir.
Thank you so much, Minister. And I know the Deisha Cafe Down Waterford are delighted that they're in your constituency and look forward to welcoming you back when the face-to-face cafes are up and running again. So thank you. I'd like to now introduce Dr. Emer Begley, who has been central in dementia cafes in Ireland and to really making this project happen. So I'll hand over to Emer. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sinead, and good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here at the launch of the Irish Dementia Cafe Network this morning, and it's a very changed context from when the idea of the launch was first suggested some months ago. But it's fantastic to be here, to have the model and the website, and to be joined by so many of you this morning. As Sinead said, I work with the National Dementia Office in the HSE and commissioned the establishment of the network. And for the next few minutes, I'm just going to talk you through the context around that and to outline some future plans. A good starting point, I suppose, is to acknowledge the changing landscape of dementia services, and the Minister has already mentioned that. The publication of the National Dementia Strategy some years ago provides a blueprint for how we should meet the needs of people with dementia in Ireland and their families, their carers and care partners. And shortly we'll see 10 new dementia advisors in post, as already been said. And there's also 26 memory technology resource rooms now established around the country. But there are gaps in services and supports, and are particularly at all stages, but at the post-diagnostic stage as well. And our role in the National Dementia Office is to support the implementation of the strategy. And in this role, we commenced a dementia post-diagnostic project, which with the support of an expert advisory group, it was looking at that post-diagnostic service gap. And we had to start off by generating evidence to support the development of models of care. And we undertook a review of, where we commissioned a review of post-diagnostic support. We did an evaluation of a scheme looking at cognitive therapies, as well as, really importantly, consulting people with dementia, consulting family carers, and scoping out current practice with health and social care professionals. What came out of this work was the relevance and importance of community-based support, which enabled the person to learn more about the condition, to understand it, to meet others also living with dementia, and to have a space where they can come with their supporters that is welcoming and social. And we've already heard how they are the kind of variables that make a dementia cafe. So the dementia cafe has really fitted that brief. And Anya Keane is going to talk a little bit later about the research they did in CSRD around the impact and benefit of cafes. So I won't go into that in any great detail. But at the time we did this work, what we noticed was that there was parts of the country with no dementia, Alzheimer or memory cafes. And for others, which other communities who wanted to establish a cafe, there was no real support for them unless they were connected to a large organisation. And for cafes who were established, there was little in the way of support to help them overcome those difficulties, any difficulties encountered. So the concept of establishing a dementia cafe network was born, with the idea that it would be a space where cafes could come together for peer learning and sharing, where tools could be identified to support existing cafes and also communities who were interested in getting started. And we were very lucky to receive the funding that the Minister has mentioned through Dormant Accounts through the Department of Health. And we were delighted to work with Sinead Grennan and Grace Dennison in Engaging Dementia, who've done tremendous work getting the network up and running, particularly in light of a global pandemic. So well done to Grace and Sinead and colleagues in Engaging Dementia. I sat in on a couple of the sessions that Sinead and Grace have run in relation to the development of the model and the work around the network. And what's really struck me is from existing cafes, their real willingness to share experiences and knowledge, and a sense of the importance of the work that they are doing, and the collaborative nature of the groups who have come together to set up dementia cafes. And really people realise the potential around this to support people into the future. That's before I even talk about the innovation of cafes who have gone online. And I know there's cafes that now have run virtually every week, and Helena and colleagues in Cantwerk and Kevin are starting their own virtual cafe, I know, down there in the coming weeks. So it's, you know, the innovation, creative thinking that goes alongside dementia cafes is really tremendous. So what's the next step? Well, the dementia cafes are following public health guidance and hoping to reopen safely in the coming months, and we'll support them around that and support Engaging Dementia around that. Ourselves in the National Dementia Office, we're in the process of developing a model of care for dementia, which will be published in the new year. And dementia cafes are an important part of that care pathway for people, and particularly as the Minister has said, they're often a first step for people into formal services. And we need to work towards continuity of care, and that's something that the NDO is really focused on, and also integration across support services, as well as continuously raising awareness of dementia and challenging the stigma that surrounds it. So before I go, I just want to acknowledge all those who are involved in running dementia cafes across the country. A special acknowledgement to the Alzheimer's Society, who run a large number of them, and also to the many volunteers who are involved. thank everyone for their involvement in developing the model. A particular thank you to Sinead and Grace. You've really led the way on this, and it's fantastic work. And I think it's just to wish everybody the best of luck on how we move forward with this into the future. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to you this morning, and I'll hand you back to Sinead.
Okay, thank you so much, Emer. And I can only say yes to all of that. And to say that dementia cafes, the atmosphere, it's interesting that the atmosphere is the same throughout, no matter where you go to the cafe. And that spirit cafes have been wonderful to work with over the past 12 months, and organizations like Emer was saying, the Alzheimer's Society, DSIDC, all of these organizations have been wonderful to work with too. So there really has been a wonderful sense of togetherness, which is kind of appropriate because that's exactly what the cafe feels like. So now I'm going to hand over to Miriam, who launched Donnybrook. So she aimed the first cafe and is here with us today. Thank you, Miriam.
Thanks so much, Sinead. First of all, I just want to say I feel quite privileged and honoured to be on this webinar. Morning to the Minister and to everyone else. And it was so interesting to hear the Minister speak and Emer there about the details of this network. From my own personal point of view, to be honest, when Sinead invited me to open up that first cafe in Donnybrook in 2011, I hadn't a clue what it was going to be like. And I remember I was presenting prime time that night, as I will be doing tonight. Nothing changes in my life. And I ran down and went in, and it stuck with me for months after. I was so struck by what a wonderful idea it was, how simple it was, but how incredibly powerful and beautiful it was. And I got talking to a lot of people that day, many of them carers, of course, many of them themselves, people who were suffering in the early stages of dementia. And there was a wonderful couple called Carmel and Andy. I think sadly, Sinead said they are no longer with us, going back to 2011. But they were absolutely amazing. They were just talking about the benefits of the cafe, how, like all things in life, a problem shared, to use a cliche, is a problem, you know, aired. And that a lot of the time, I think, when you have something like dementia in your family, you feel very alone, you feel very cut off. And this cafe, and now the cafe network, it was just a wonderful idea because both you could share the issues facing you. There was a camaraderie and a friendship. There was fun. There was this incredible tea set, an antique tea set, you know, that Carmel and Andy kept talking about as well. There was a beautiful smell of fresh cakes. There was beautiful coffee and tea. And you cannot underestimate the importance of somewhere like that. And funny enough, a couple of months later, I was making a program for RT about carers. And we went down to Offaly and we filmed this remarkable man called Jack. I won't give his surname just to be private. And he was minding his wife with dementia. Now, he'd been minding her for about 40 years and she was still going strong. They were possibly the happiest married couple. We all left, the crew and I, afterwards and said, they're an ad for happiness. But I was telling him about the cafe in Donnybrook. And I was telling him about the wonderful idea it was. And they were both so struck by it that I gather afterwards, this is going back now to maybe early 2012, they set up kind of an unofficial cafe themselves in their own small little conservatory at the back of their house in Offaly. So even there, they realised the importance of reaching out, of chatting to other people, of knowing that you're not the only person going through this. And when you have issues in your life, I think everyone's the same, you can be very lonely. You can feel very alone. And the whole idea of the cafe network is you don't feel like that. You also meet medics, as Carmel and Andy said back in 2011, in a very relaxed atmosphere. I mean, normally I suppose you meet people like Emer, you feel you're in that professional relationship where the doctor is guiding and minding. But something about the cafe means that it's not that you're just equal, it just means you're chatting to the person in a more relaxed atmosphere. So even on that level, it really works. And just before we went on this webinar today, I had the pleasure of talking to Kevin and Helena, who of course are setting up their own online Cantor Cafe, for now online anyway. And just before we went on this live, I hadn't spoken to Kevin and Helena before, and Kevin will be telling you his story soon. But I was struck by your story, Kevin, and I know you're listening to this. I didn't know anything about you. And for me, it so resonated. Both the joy that you both seem to have in your own lives, the way in which you are dealing with the difficulties in your lives. And instead of sitting down and moaning, you write books and you're launching a cafe. So the fact that there's going to be 21 of those like yours in Cantor is just so inspirational and inspiring. So I just want to say, when Sinead mentioned this, 9 years on, we must meet more often, Sinead. From the opening of the first cafe, she said, would I launch this? And as I said at the very beginning of my words, I feel both honoured and privileged to be involved in the launch of this cafe network. Mila buenas.
Thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you so much. So we're officially launched. Minister has spoken, Miriam has spoken. And now it's lovely to be able to hand over to some people who attend cafes, and then we'll be handing over to Kevin and Talina to share their experience of what it's like to run one. So now, if technology will work well for me, I am going to play a little video where we're going to hear people's some personal stories.
Well, we've been to the cafe when it was a real cafe.
Yes.
In Donnybrook a couple of times.
Yes.
And I think we both found it was great because.
Oh yes. Meeting other people is stimulating in itself, and seeing other people with the same condition makes it almost normal.
Yeah.
No, and it really goes with the territory of age, and one has to accept that. And there are a lot worse things than that, than the dementia.
Also, I think that the interesting thing about the virtual cafes is that we thought they might be a little bit more difficult than the real thing. But in fact, I think we've all, almost from the very first one, we just enjoyed it. It was not the same as, but as good as being there. And especially, I think some of the speakers were excellent. And I mean, they do tell you if you're getting on in years, I'm talking with me.
Yeah, yes.
If you're, you need to stimulate your brain. You need to try new things, listen to new things. And that's exactly what you got.
Yes.
But I must say that both from when we started going to the cafe in Donnybrook and online, the huge thing that we both kind of separately commented on was there's no flood of warmth.
Yes.
And it's very relaxed. There's no strain, there's no tension, there's no feeling, oh God, what do I do now? Yeah. You don't have to do a darn thing. Except just sit there and sip your tea or coffee and take part if you want to. So it's really been extremely, it's nice. It's nice to look forward to. And it's great that the cafes are going around the country.
Yes, and I always think it's rather sad for people of our generation, and there were quite a few who wouldn't have PC skills. And I mean, I've been a two-finger typist from the time I was 16, when I bought my first typewriter at an auction, an old-fashioned 1932, I can't remember the name of it, with the ribbon. Anyway, that's another story.
I'm amazed you don't still have it.
I wish I did. It's worth a fortune now. It's an antique.
I remember going in the first evening, I was completely distraught. I was traumatized. It was in an awful place, really was. And like emotionally very distressed because I had just gotten the diagnosis and I didn't know where to start, where to begin. So I walked into this lovely, calm, quiet building in Donnybrook. I'll never forget it. By the way, my name is Carly and it's my husband, my partner, Owen, the lovely Owen, who has the Alzheimer's. But I remember that first time going in and seeing all the lovely tables, the calm, the quiet, just the serenity of the place. I really felt at ease. I couldn't believe it now because I was so traumatized. And there was a woman talking there on that night and it was Kate Irvine, just basically talking about dementia in general and that. And I remember listening to her, and I cried the whole way through the talk, but I actually related to what she was talking about. And I was genuinely hugely traumatized, because Owen and I had quite a complicated background, medical and legal, and that our lives were a mess, but not because of us. But so I was going on my own quietly for a while just to get my feet on the ground, because Owen hadn't been given the diagnosis of the dementia at that point. So I remember the first time I brought Owen, and I was quite nervous, because at this point I had known some of the staff and I knew people in there, and I loved the chat and the talk, and no problem talking, no problem chatting to people. And Owen is quite reserved and quite quiet and a very gentle person. And when he walked in with me, I couldn't get over how nice people were to him, not just to me. And I was so grateful. Oh God, I actually cried for gratitude. I really did. I was really emotional the first night Owen came, because I just didn't know. I mean, how do you explain to this young man, you're bringing him to a thing called the Alzheimer Cafe? But anyway, it was lovely. With Alzheimer's, you tend to get ignored a lot. And I know people ignored Owen, and secretly and quietly in me, always when we'd go out anywhere, and I'd be there saying, oh, please God, somebody say hello to him. Please, somebody talk to him. Don't ignore him. Don't just talk to me. He's there. He's your friend. You know him. You know, talk to him as well as me. You know what I mean? Life goes on. He's still the same person. He's just a little bit lost, and he needs more time and a little bit of patience. I mean, Owen has seen me cry more often than I have grey hairs in my head, right? But I have to tell you, I did cry in the Alzheimer Cafe with grief and trauma, but also with relief that there was some place we could go and actually sit back and relax. I mean, not to labour the point, but I'll never forget when he got up and started helping with the dishes. I knew then he was at home. Because Owen and I live in a house. We didn't really live in a home. We have a difficult situation, and he felt at home there, and I was never so grateful. I was just, and I hugged and kissed people that were total strangers, because I just felt, thank you so much, because it actually was a lifesaver to me in a real sense. I'm not exaggerating when I say that, but it just kept me, I think, from nearly going over the cliff. I was in such a bad state, and it just meant the world to Owen.
Yes, we very much enjoy the virtual Dementia Cafe. We have recently joined we've recently joined, and never had actually attended a face-to-face one before, but we do enjoy it. It's a great way of seeing people face-to-face, communicating, and we enjoy the banter that goes on between the participants who know each other. We find it very helpful, because these are strange times, and it's good to be able to connect with other people in the country who are in a similar situation as ourselves, and it's in a way giving us moral support. We enjoy the topics that you've chosen are very interesting, and they're varied, so yeah, we like the action ones as well, and we couldn't make any changes to it, but we do enjoy coming.
All the energy you put into it.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So what do you think of it? Yes, you must.
Well, sure, you said what I thought of it, and it's very good. I enjoyed all the energy and everything that goes into it. Yeah, more than pleased and happy with it.
Yeah,
because you do put a lot of work into it. Yeah.
And we, I suppose, look forward to the day when we can to attend a real one as well. Yeah. But I suppose the cafe is good in a way too, that you're not tied to it, and you know, if you can't make it one day, it's not, you can still pick up the following week, if you know what I mean. Okay, you've missed one of the nice topics probably, but you know, it's good that it's not too formal, as in that, oh God, I'm sorry I wasn't here last week because, you know, but it's
a great help.
Yeah.
Compared to long ago, there was no help.
Mm. Mm-hmm. And it keeps you up to date as well, like with changes that are happening, or supports that are available. And we are pleased with join it, and we're
wouldn't miss it for anything.
Yeah.
So thank you. It was lovely to hear the stories, and there were stories from people who attended just a few cafes, but as we said, there are other cafes all around the country. So over the coming months and years, it'll be nice to capture some of their stories too. So without further ado, I will hand over to Kevin and Helena.
Hi, thank you, Emer. As we live in Kanturk and North Cork, I suppose we're considered to be living in rural Ireland, but we're actually quite central down here in Kanturk, as we are only an hour from Limerick, an hour from Tralee, and an hour from Cork City. Therefore, we have had people attend our Dementia Cafe in Kanturk from Cork, Kerry and Limerick. And in our Dementia Cafe, of course, we have to have, and we do have, a lovely, warm and welcoming atmosphere. And this helps the people who attend, our people with dementia and their carers, to feel at ease immediately. And as Kevin's full-time carer, I understand the need for a social get-together for us carers. And indeed, at times at the cafe, we have the chance, I do, to have a willing listening ear, even if only to chat about our shared lived experience, because as carers, it's lovely to chat about our experience and our strengths and our resilience with others. So our Dementia Cafe, we would consider, is a very safe space for those with dementia and their carers to get some time out together and to socialise. And of course, we have made some very, very special friends. We're also very lucky that our dementia advisor, Amy Murphy, is always at hand to give her professional guidance. And of course, we all benefit from sharing a laugh and a nice cup of tea or coffee together at our Dementia Cafe in Kanturk. So I will now pass you over to Kevin. Thank you.
Hi, I'm a bit overwhelmed actually by this morning, so forgive me. When we decided to open our Dementia Cafe, I wanted it a place where people could come and talk about dementia and feel safe. I wanted people to be less afraid of their diagnosis, and I wanted people to feel that there was a safe place to come and that they were among friends and people who understood them. A lot of people who have dementia feel very afraid and very alone, and I'm one of them. And while I still have fear in my life, and that's every day, I do know that when I'm with people who have dementia and their carers, I feel safe. And I know that I'm with people who understand me. And as our cafe grows, we're going to have different speakers each month, speakers like solicitors who might talk about things like the power of attorney. We might have a local guard to talk about being safe in the community. And then when the cafe opened, I found that's what actually happened. People came, some just wanted information in the form of a leaflet. Some people wanted to talk in private, either to me as a person living with Lewy body dementia, to Helena as a carer, or to Amy Murphy, our wonderful dementia advisor. People might have read some article that I would have written or heard about some media work that we would have done, and they would have felt the same way and experienced the same thing, and they'd want to come and talk about it on a one-to-one. Then there were days when we would just sit around in a group and have a chat about our experiences, our life in general, and it's not always serious. We have a laugh, and you can be sure sometimes someone will tell a joke or two, which of course is always age appropriate. The one thing we can never get over is how quick the time goes. Our meeting is held in a local coffee shop, which is given to us free, and we're there from 3 to 4:30 in the afternoon, and that's when the cafe is quiet. The most important thing for us was to ensure the door was always open. but COVID put a stop to that, but only temporarily, because hopefully from next month we will be online, and I'm really looking forward to it, no matter whether we have 1 or 51 people. I want people to be less afraid of this horrible disease we call dementia, and to be welcome in our cafe in Kanturk, whether in real time or online. Thank you.
Hi folks, would you like to say any more, or will I leave it at that? Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing both your experience and your experience of running your wonderful cafe. I've never been down to your cafe in Kanturk, but I can't wait to go. As soon as all of this craziness is behind us and our face-to-face cafes are open again, and in the meantime, I look forward to tuning into your virtual cafe. We will totally be tuned in. So thank you so much for that. Now I am going to hand over to Anya Tehan, who is going to give us a presentation. Thanks, Anya. He's going to do a presentation on the research that underpins this network. So I will just open up your slides here for you. Thanks.
Brilliant. Excellent. So thanks to everyone for all of their talks and interesting perspectives that they've given on the Dementia Cafes so far. It was really great to hear it coming from different angles about the benefits that the Dementia Cafe has offered throughout Ireland. From my own perspective, and as a true academic, I have a small presentation to give on the research that we've done in the Centre for Economic and Social Research on Dementia in NUI Galway. So I started a project on the Dementia Cafes in Ireland with 2 colleagues, Christine Fitzgerald and Eamon O'Shea, in 2018. And originally we had planned on doing a small study evaluating Alzheimer's cafes, but then we became aware that the National Dementia Office was planning on funding a national dementia cafe coordinator role. And for us, this was an opportunity to use our research really productively and develop a very strong evidence base, which incorporated the views of people with dementia, family carers, coordinators, volunteers, and also to identify some of the challenges as well as strengths that Alzheimer's cafes in Ireland were experiencing. So for us, our small evaluation project suddenly became a lot bigger, and it actually took us 2 stages to develop the evidence base that we wanted to, which helped to inform the Alzheimer Cafe network today. Yeah. Sorry, Sinead, how do I go on? Oh yeah. So yeah, the research took part in 2 stages. The first stage was very much based on exploring the experiences of people with dementia and family carers. And a lot of those experiences came out quite strongly in the video today, and also in Kevin and Trudy's talk, that we achieved this using focus groups and semi-structured interviews with family carers, with people with dementia, volunteers and coordinators, people who were involved in the day-to-day running of Alzheimer cafes. And this was carried out in 2 sites. What came across really strongly was that there were kind of 4 key areas that the Alzheimer cafes, of the Alzheimer Cafe and dementia cafes that were valued by people who were attending. And this was a sense of community within the Alzheimer Cafe, so the ability to make friends and socialize, atmosphere, having a very warm and welcoming atmosphere, and the Minister referenced this earlier, that a lot of people's experiences at that point had been in clinical settings, so being able to come into the cafe and have a more normal experience and discussion about dementia was a huge asset of the cafes. The activities, having accessible and inclusive activities for people with dementia and carers to engage with, and then useful information. So having information avenues within the cafe from a variety of different areas, including other cafe attendees, guest speakers, and health and social care professionals who were attending. And I'll just go on to the next slide. So then, building on stage 1 of our research, we carried out a national survey of dementia cafes in Ireland. And the aim of this was to map and identify the key characteristics of cafes on a national scale and look at how the cafes were developing in Ireland. So this national survey looked at mapping, activities, governance, who was attending the cafe, who was funding the cafe, and the different challenges that were faced by people who were trying to run cafes and coordinators throughout Ireland. So from this research, go on to the next slide. So from this research, from our mapping exercise, it was really interesting to see that there had been such massive uptake of the Alzheimer Cafe in Ireland. So as Sinead mentioned, the first cafe started in 2011, and since then 26 cafes opened in Ireland. The study was carried out in 2018, but in 2000, even though 26 cafes had been set up, only 19 were still in operation in 2018. So this raised some questions about the sustainability, the support needs of the Alzheimer's Cafe to continue to be able to develop this as a sustainable resource for family carers of people with dementia in Ireland. So the national survey identified a few different challenges for coordinators and people running cafes. One was resources, so looking at different avenues for funding, but also resources in terms of accessing information from health and social care professionals and other professionals like the guards, like Kevin mentioned, and also legal professionals that will be able to come and give guest lectures. There was limited information for coordinators available on the guidance, evidence and evaluation in terms of best practice of the Alzheimer's cafes. A lot of coordinators found this hard to access. And then also maintaining attendance and disseminating the Alzheimer Cafe to ensure that a lot of people were able to access this support. So from our research, based on these two stages, we developed a number of recommendations. So based off the mapping exercise, we found that supporting the development of new cafes, particularly in the south of the country, where there was limited access to Alzheimer cafes in 2018, would be a good way of increasing national access to the cafes. Then also developing a support network around individual coordinators, but also linking the coordinators together to create an information exchange network and a peer support resource for people running cafes. One of the big strengths of the cafes that came out from the research was that people with dementia and family carers were really at the core of the cafe, and to continue to have people with dementia and carers as active contributors. So probably Trudy and Kevin were the best example of this given so far today, but also to identify different strategies within cafes for engaging people with dementia and family carers and integrating their feedback into the running of the cafe, and then promoting the Alzheimer Cafe as a resource throughout the community, so to disseminate this information to people with dementia and carers, but also to use this as a way of raising awareness among the public that these type of resources are available and are really useful. And then finally, to develop a set of core features of the Alzheimer's Cafe that would help to maybe create a very flexible evaluation framework that cafes could work from. So using these research recommendations, we communicated with Sinead Brennan to kind of develop maybe a very initial framework, which Sinead and Grace then did huge work on it to bring it to the point that it is at today. And then finally, I'd just like to thank everyone who took part in this research. We did have a project advisory group with Sinead Brennan, Aisling Harman, Emer Begley, and I'd also like to thank all the cafes and people who contributed to the research. We really appreciate it. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Let me unmute myself. Thank you so much, Anya. That was fantastic. And Anya, and of course her colleagues, Professor Eamon O'Shea and Christine Fitzgerald over in the centre, have been absolutely central to measuring the impact of dementia cafes in Ireland and helping to create the basis for this network. So thank you so much to Anya. And Thank you. As everybody joins us again, I hope that you've got a sense, the people who are here today, of the kind of essence of what the cafe is about, and then the real evidence that it's based upon and where it sits on the post-diagnostic pathway in Ireland. So this is a really, it's a support service that kind of doesn't really feel like a support service, but very much a community hub. So over in the coming months and years, we're looking forward to working with communities all over Ireland to develop cafes in their areas. So we'll have a mentoring system between local cafes, and the next step for the network is developing a toolkit, and we'll be setting up how to set up a dementia cafe workshop. So they will be online for now, so I suppose we will be working within the new normal for now, but in the background, all around Ireland, we can all continue to work on this together. And who knows, there might be some groups who will start virtually first and then go face-to-face afterwards. So just to mention here as well, the HSE Understand Together campaign does fantastic work. They have community champions all over Ireland, so we'll be linking in with them, and we have done already. The memory technology resource rooms that Emer also mentioned, there's one in every county in Ireland now. They are online, they have a huge amount of resources, so assistive technology, booklets, information. So if you're living with dementia, or if someone in your life is living with dementia, do go online. And I know some of my family aren't great with, well, myself and Grace have now become a little bit more familiar with Zoom. But if there's someone in your life who really can't really access technology or the computer or the internet, work with them and support them to do that, because there are so many resources online now that can be accessed. Also, we now have a website. Like I said, we're about to do a whistle stop tour, and we'll show you a few screenshots from our new website. We're also on Twitter. A massive thank you to Grace, who manages all the social media and has been overseeing all of that for us. So thank you, Grace. So follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, go onto the website and become a part of the Dementia Cafe movement in Ireland. So I say thank you to Miriam, thank you to Emer, thank you Kevin and Helena, thank you Anya, thank you Minister Mary Butler. And now we are going to have our whistle stop tour. So we will see you again. And if there's any other comments. Okay, take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, Kevin. Bye, Helena.
I'll have that in the post. I'll have that in the post this evening, Miriam.
Thank you so much. It was an honour to meet you.
I'll have that in the post this evening.
Bye.
Thanks
See
a
you
lot.
guys.
Great words, Miriam. Thanks a mil.
Thanks a lot, friends.
Bye,
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Have a good day.